Hi folks, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kat, and this time I'm talking about books from the Maldives. I was going to do several reviews, but then I was too lazy with taking notes, so I'm just gonna give you an overview of what I was reading at the beach while I was hiding in the shadow because, you know, day one and I got the sunburn despite all the sunscreen. Starting off with the best book possibly from the holiday is Emperor Mollusk versus the Sinister Brain by A. Lee Martinez. It was just wacky and fun all around. In it, Mollusk, a Neptunian who used to be warlord of terror, survives a assassination attempt and decides that he needs to figure out who's trying to kill him, and maybe they can actually entertain him while he works against them. Because his biggest problem is being bored. He is accompanied by Zala, a Venusian who really wants to see him tried and imprisoned for the crimes he committed on Venus. He was a bit busy conquering more places in the galaxy before he pretty much retired from warlording, I guess. But because she wants to see him in court, she has to make sure that he survives until then, so she accompanies him as his bodyguard. And with them travels his pet ultrapede Snark. I never thought I would think of a giant insect as cute, but Snark is just adorable. She's also fairly cat-like in her behavior at points, and she's near indestructible, so great pet really. The interaction between Zala and Mollusk was just fun to read. They are bickering non-stop. They visit a couple of places, all of them with like unique features and fun things to read. So overall a great book. I'd give it this cat. And I can only recommend you pick it up if you like something wacky, fun and a little bit out there. I also read the second book in the Crystal Springs Cozy Mystery Series, A Witch Too Hot by Paula and Emmy Harmon. And I was a bit disappointed after the last one. I mean, the first book had a couple of issues too, obviously, but it was overall quite fun and interesting to read. But the second one was a bit of a letdown, I think. So Cascade is still trying to figure out what kind of witch she is. She doesn't know what element affiliation she has yet, so she goes through a couple of tests. And even after the first one goes really, really wrong, I was like, okay, this is gonna end up with her being special, isn't it? And yeah, she's just special. Same as her mom, actually. So I'm not sure why nobody in the book guessed at this beforehand. And it was all just like, oh no, we need to check every single element. Who knows what you are? It's like, well, you could have guessed from what her mom is, maybe, but never mind that. And the police work in this, I mean, it tends to be not the greatest in cozy mysteries in general, because you need a main to do some of the work, right? But it is just ever small in this one. The sheriff is not just incompetent, he's also sexist, racist, or speciesist maybe, rather, in a supernatural sense, but you know, he's just all around the antagonist asshole. There's a limit to how shoddy police work should get, really. Big issue for me, but that's more on a personal level. We barely see anything of Echo. Cascade more or less owns a speaking cat, and all we see is him saunter in, ask for food, and do like one small thing towards the very end. Outside of that, he's just not in the book, more or less, and it's just sad. You have a talking animal companion and you're not using him at all, really. There are a couple of mistakes left in this book as well, and I can ignore missing punctuation, missing spaces or spaces too much or whatever, but at some point, and more than once, she refers to Sheriff Noble. Graham Noble is Cascade's love interest and neighbor. He does not work for the police, and the sheriff is Lloyd. Those are two different characters, and yet we see Sheriff Noble a couple of times, and it's like, nobody noticed this, really? Also within the story, a new siren gets elected, which is also tied to the murder case, but ignore the murder mystery for the moment. A new siren gets elected, and this touches on a racism issue, essentially. The shapeshifters are rallying that they want representation on the council as well. There are only 5 council members, and traditionally those are all witches, and none of the other species that live in cozy Crystal Springs. Oops, sorry. Well, they are petitioning to have some representation on the council, which then obviously leads to other species like the sprites and anything else that lives in Crystal Springs that we haven't seen yet to want some representation as well. And the council just turns this down. It's too late to change the rules, and it has to be witches, and it can't be anything else. And what they have to contend with in the end is just voting for the witch who has the most interest in their issues. And while this seems fairly reflective of reality, it's still shit. What I really liked about the first book was how much you got to see of the world and how much there was to discover alongside Cascade. And in the second book, I barely picked anything new up about the world. It's a couple of the things that you've seen in the first one show up. Very few new things get introduced, and I'm like, for somebody who's still discovering this world, I feel like there should be more to see for Cascade and us. So overall, I was not too fussed about the second book in the series, and I'm not sure whether I will pick up the next one. We'll see. If I'm on another cozy mystery trip, then maybe, but I don't know. This wasn't all that great, I think. More cozy mysteries. This was a recommendation by a friend and viewer. Black Cats and Butlers by Janine Beacham, and I really enjoyed this one. Rose's butler and friend Argyle gets murdered, along with 2 other butlers in York. And while this is happening, also the cat statues of York start to go missing. And Rose obviously is very upset about her friend's death and decides to investigate herself. She enlists her friend Emily, and together they set out to try and find out who killed poor Argyle. In this they also meet more friends of Argyle's, butlers, that all went to the same academy, Silvercrest Hall. And it turns out that butlers do a lot more than just wait on people. They are also the guardians of York. Rose was a really nice character, and once I got over the fact that she only turned 12 at the beginning of the book, and I have a hard time believing that adults would take a 12-year-old seriously in a murder investigation, or in general, really. I was told those were different times, and you were more or less middle-aged by the age of 12, so this also tracks because some other character at some point later in the book suggests that, ooh, Rose is old enough to make a good match and marry soon. You just sit there like, oh god, no, she's 12, oh no. But yeah, those were the times. So being only 12-year-old, she makes some decisions that actually you see in plenty of grown-ups in the genre as well, which are not brilliant, but somewhat understandable at the moment. I'm still not sure why all of the adults decided Rose was an asset rather than a liability in this investigation, because, I mean, she's still like a scrawny 12-year-old, and it's not like she can go many places that the adults can't go, so it seems a bit strange, but she actually helps with the investigation. And her friend Emily is my new favorite side character. She's just hilarious. Despite the book starting out with a chapter from Watchful the Cat's perspective, there's not enough cat involvement in this. I mean, it deals with the cat statues of York, yes, but overall there are not enough cats doing stuff in this. Or they do play an important role at some point. So overall this was short and enjoyable, and I will definitely pick up the next one. Last for now is another cozy mystery. This was a recommendation by Tiffany. I will link her channel below. This is Louisiana Longshot, and I haven't noted down the author's name. I will put it on screen. That was quite fun as well. It was well written. I liked the characters, especially the way she fits into the town she moves to. So in this, Fortune messes up her, well, one of her many cases as a CIA assassin. I'm not sure why you would describe yourself as assassin. That's not a good job description, but never mind that. So in this, Fortune messes up one of her cases in the Middle East and has to go undercover because an arms dealer is putting out a hit on her, and there might be a leak in the CIA. So she assumes her director's niece's identity and moves to Louisiana. She befriends some older ladies who were friends with her aunt as well. And together they set out to solve the mystery of the bone that gets washed up in Fortune's backyard. Yeah, so overall I like the characters. The police in this town doesn't seem to be as incompetent as it sometimes is in the cozy mystery genre. Sure, they didn't solve the case, that's left to our main as usual, but at least they weren't like bumbling idiots, although there are only 2 policemen in this town apparently, and only one of them does the work, so this one is not a bumbling idiot. So there's that. I have a couple of minor issues with Fortune herself. So she's a secret agent and she travels the world to do undercover assignments and stuff. Well, if you're well traveled, then I expect you to know a couple of things, and yet she stumbles into Louisiana, sinful Louisiana, and is bewildered to notice some things. Like, she has never heard of okra. She is confused by how her aunt's last name is pronounced as French, by the way. I mean, sure, she has never gone undercover in France, I would imagine, but it still feels like she has a couple of gaps in her knowledge where you're like, are you sure you've seen much of the world? Because you don't act like it. I also have to wonder whether Fortune is slightly psychotic, because at least in the beginning of the book she constantly thinks about how easy it would be to kill someone or to take on somebody, and overall she seems to like killing a bit too much maybe. But overall I really enjoyed this one and will pick up more in this series as well, so thank you Tiffany for the recommendation. It's a really good one. But I also took A Court of Thorns and Roses with me because I figured, oh, I would have plenty of time on holiday to read that. And I managed 2 chapters because of the other books I brought along with me are more interesting. Yeah, so back to the read along soon. Maybe I will read more on the plane, but now I have to go swim because it's like 35 degrees and I'm melting. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you pick up some of the cozy mysteries I mentioned, because at least 2 of them are really good, and so is the book by Amy Martinez. Like and subscribe if you want to help this channel out, and thank you so much for stopping by. Bye!